I just look just like beaten down by motherhood and by all the responsibilities that were placed on me by the world. And that's not how I envision motherhood to be for me. Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey. Hello, welcome to the No Longer Last Journey podcast. Oh my goodness, this is the very first episode and I have been wanting to do this for so long. So thank you for being here. Today I'm going to be talking about how it all began, and I promise this is not going to be one of those long and boring origin stories. I think you're going to find the story pretty interesting. But I figured this would be a good place to start. This is episode 1, so why not take you to the beginning of the journey? So, my goodness, how it all began. Well, I almost passed out in a Trader Joe's almost 4 years ago. And if you don't know what a Trader Joe's is, it is a grocery store. And if you've ever dealt with painful burnout, painful exhaustion, and I use the word painful intentionally because I was so exhausted and burned out that every part of my body, including my brain, just ached every day. My eyes hurt, my back hurt, my brain hurt. I felt like I always had inflammation. My face hurt, my muscles would burn. Like my body felt like it was shutting down. And I would go to doctors on occasion and complain about this or that. And, they'd run tests and they would be like, oh, all of the tests came back negative. There's nothing wrong with you. Even though I couldn't speak a sentence to a doctor without getting teary. And it was like nobody referred me to a psychiatrist. No one referred me to a therapist. No one guided me. And I had just had my second child and my first baby was only 2 years old. And I really hate when society wants to say that it's your responsibility to get, everything that you need, because sometimes we're in such a fragile place mentally, especially when we give birth to children, that no, it's not our responsibility to figure everything out when we literally just birthed an entire human being and have been up day and night, peeing in the middle of the night since the 3rd trimester. So if you can relate to that experience, I think you're going to find this podcast episode really healing. So almost 4 years ago, I had another baby. So I have 2 kids, ages 2 and newborn, and I was almost 2 years into being a caregiver. Out of some really unfortunate circumstances, I became the full-time caregiver for my brother who has autism and a serious autoimmune disease. And he knows that I share those 2 facts about him. I ran it by him and he gave me his permission. And don't get me wrong, I am glad that I was able to take care of my brother. He was very sick when he came to me, but it was a lot to put on me. And I cared for him starting when my first child was only 10 months old. And it was really intense. At one point, I had to quit my part-time job because of the number of appointments I had to take him to were so many, and the amount of time I spent on the phone navigating health insurance and social benefits. It was very time-consuming. So this all created a perfect storm. I think at this point, I'm 3 or 4 months into having my second child. You still need two hands to carry the baby because they hold their head up, but they still need to be supported. They need to be in a car seat. It was still a really intense season of motherhood, right? And I'm at Trader Joe's and I'm trying to get groceries, and I'm looking down at my list and I'm like, my kids are starting to get antsy because it's like nearing nap time and it's basically lunchtime, and I didn't get them out of the house on time, and all of these things, as moms, we have to like time when we take our kids out to be perfectly in between that post snack pre-nap window. And so I'm trying to hurry up, and all of a sudden I start to see a ton of floaters in my eyes. And I've only ever had this like once or twice in my life, and it's never been super difficult to deal with. But I mean, so many floaters that I start to not be able to see clearly. And I start to feel such an intense internal dizziness that I've never had before. I would describe it as vertigo. And then I look down at my list because I'm like, I need to grab the rest of this stuff and I need to get out of here. And I look down at my list and I can barely make out if the word that starts with B was burritos or bread. It was like my vision was starting to fail me. My ability to stand upright was starting to fail me. I had my 2-year-old in the top of the cart. My baby was actually strapped onto me because I had groceries in the main part of the cart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. Like, I'm the adult. I need to get out of here. So anyway, I'm getting to the checkout and the cashier notices that something is not right. And she offers a chair. She's like, can I get a chair for you? You look like, basically she noticed that I looked like I was going to pass out. And my automatic reaction before I even thought about it was, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. And it's like, how many of us decline help when we really need help? It's embarrassing how much it happens. Like, it's just so automatic. It's so ingrained in us. And I decided that my ego did not matter in that moment because I had my child strapped to my chest and I did not want to pass out with her on me. So I said, you know what? On second thought, could you get me that chair? And I will never forget this moment. I was like 23 years old, sitting on a chair at Trader Joe's. People are looking at me. I just look like this poor, sad, exhausted mom wearing yoga pants and hadn't showered in 3 days. And I just look just like beaten down by motherhood and by all the responsibilities that were placed on me by the world. And that's not how I envisioned motherhood to be for me. And it was really a really mortifying experience. And so anyway, I finished paying, and some employees at Trader Joe's, thanks Trader Joe's, not sponsored, helped me pack up all my groceries, and they asked if they could do anything else for me. And I said, no, I'm fine, I'm okay. I climb into the car, I get my kids buckled in, I give them some of the snacks I bought from Trader Joe's. At this point, my headache is becoming a migraine. The pain is becoming more and more splitting and difficult. And I call my husband, but I don't want to worry him because he works at a job that was just really not family friendly, and they did not look kindly at people leaving for any reason at all. So I let him know that I had kind of an incident and that nothing bad happened, and that I had taken some ibuprofen once I got in the car, and I was going to sit in the car until the ibuprofen kicked in. And eventually the ibuprofen kicked in, my vision started to clear up because it was indeed related to getting a migraine, and then I was able to drive home even though I was in a lot of pain. Then by the time I got home, the migraine kind of burst through the medication that I took, and I needed to ask literally a random passerby at the apartment complex I lived at to help me bring my groceries in. Like, I literally was just pushing the stroller that I had loaded with groceries as best as I could fit on the double stroller. And I just asked this random dude because I felt like I was going to pass out again and like I was going to throw up. So this guy is helping me get my groceries to my apartment. He's loading them into the entryway, and I run to the bathroom and I start vomiting. And the last time that happened to me, I was 17 years old, and I had a migraine so bad that it caused me to throw up. So at this point, I call my husband and I'm like, I'm vomiting, my vertigo's back, light is hurting me at my eyes, and I can't open them without it being in excruciating pain. I need you to come home. And of course, my husband's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going through all of this. I'm coming right now. But we as parents, it's like we're constantly battling between the needs of ourselves, the needs of our marriages, the needs of our children, and the needs of our whole family financially. And so I was constantly weighing that and said, I need you to take me to the doctor. I went to the doctor and they told me that I needed to get some rest. They said, these are classic migraine symptoms. You're clearly very exhausted and there would be no point checking you into the hospital because what you really need is rest. And I don't think this doctor, who was an older male, understood that I would get more rest at the hospital than I would at home. I wanted so badly to be checked into the hospital that day, so badly. And I've learned since then that apparently this is a common experience for exhausted new mothers. It's called a hospital fantasy. And a lot of us go through this because society only allows people to take time off when they're dying, at least in America. So I was sent home. I asked my husband to take the rest of that day and the whole next day off, which was a big deal at his job, but he was able to get the time. And I realized I really needed to rethink my life. I really needed to get some help, but I was still completely lost, depressed, and really not doing okay. And I had no idea what to do next, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the therapist that I started working with and the life-changing advice that she shared with me after this break. Did you know I send a weekly letter? It's called the No Longer Last Weekly Letter, and it's a super helpful resource you can get for free where I share journal prompts, mental health resources, encouragement, and updates about new podcast episodes, YouTube videos, and new products and offerings. People who sign up for my weekly letter also get special promotions and offers I don't share anywhere else. If you want a free weekly resource to help you make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely sign up for the No Longer Last Weekly Letter. Go to miahemstad.com/letter to sign up today. I'll also link to this in the show notes. Okay, welcome back. So I want to talk about what happened next. So I had to start going to lots of doctors to try to figure out maybe there's something else. Maybe it's not burnout. Maybe it's not exhaustion. Maybe I have a tumor growing on my brain, or I had a brain aneurysm or something. I don't know. I was determined to figure out if there's anything else wrong, and I started to spend a lot of money because American healthcare sucks. And I started to spend a lot of money going to doctors and neurologists and getting testing done and x-rays and CT scans and MRIs. And guess what? All the tests came back negative. There was nothing wrong with me, according to all the tests and all the doctors that I saw. And that was actually really disheartening because it meant that I actually needed to get more rest. I actually needed to get more care. And that felt completely and utterly hopeless because I didn't have any supportive family living nearby. The support system was me. My husband was working insane hours trying to pay our bills, and it was my job to hold down the rest of the fort. And it was breaking me. And what was I supposed to do? We didn't have any money for a babysitter. We were paying off insane student loans. We were paying off our used car. It was really tough. It's like, where do you go from there? And so thankfully, a social worker at my doctor's office contacted me, and I told her I needed a no-cost therapist, not a low-cost therapist, but a no-cost therapist. And she connected me with a therapist through a maternal mental health program in Orange County where I used to live. And this is when things started to change for me. I was really hopeless still, but this therapist helped me to see that I kept everyone else's world turning in my home. She was like, when you stop functioning, everybody else stops functioning. And I know that for some people that might sound like more burdensome, But it was the wake-up call that I needed to hear, because at this point, I was feeling pretty suicidal. I was feeling like there were no options and there were no solutions. And I just wanted to leave the earth. It was so painful to exist. I just wanted to leave the earth. But hearing my therapist remind me that I make everyone in my family's world turn made me realize that my role in my family was too important to leave. I needed to stay, and I needed to figure out how to stay. And I explained to her that I just felt not only that it was impossible to take care of myself, but that I didn't deserve to, because at this point, I had been so indoctrinated with the capitalist mentality that we're all raised in, that tells us that the only thing valuable that we do is only activities that are tied to money. Only activities that earn money or that give us an education so that we can earn more money or whatever. It always has to have an economic value tied to it. And when I became a stay-at-home mom, I felt like I had no value anymore, because I was no longer valued by the society that told me that capitalism is king and money is king. And as a stay-at-home mom, I wasn't doing anything of economic value, so therefore there was no value. And there were so many other messages around me that backed that up. I mean, every time somebody asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a stay-at-home mom." And they would say, "Oh, what else do you do?" Like, as if being a stay-at-home mom isn't already 2.5 full-time jobs, which, by the way, several studies have been run that have proven that the number of hours that a stay-at-home mom works are equivalent to 2.5 full-time jobs. But I was so deep in this narrative and this ideology that if you don't do something of economic value, you have no value. And when I explained that to my therapist, I'm so grateful for what she did next. Instead of saying, "You're so worthy of care and love, Mia," because I am an abuse survivor. And at that point in my journey, I did not feel worthy of anything good. And I was not taught that I was worthy of love and care. And she knew to meet me where I was at mentally. And she helped me do a line-by-line economic value of how much money the work I do would cost my family if we outsourced it and I didn't do it for free. How much money was I saving my family by doing this work? So we started listing out all the things I do. Make appointments, drive people to those appointments, make meal plans, order groceries. Actually, I wasn't even ordering groceries. I was physically going to Costco and going to Trader Joe's, cooking 3 meals a day, cleaning the entire home, 2 bathrooms, kitchen every night, living room every night, educating our children, watching them for 16 hours a day, breastfeeding all night long. We just started listing all of these things that I do: homemaker, childcare, housekeeper, chef, personal assistant, schedule manager. And she started to put economic, like actual monetary, like how much would it cost if you hired someone to cook your meals? $30,000 a year. How much would it cost if you hired childcare for 2 children, including a newborn? Almost $50,000 a year for that area. How much would it cost if you hired a full-time caregiver for your brother? Almost $80,000 a year. When we did the math, I was saving my family almost $200,000 a year on the back of me, one person. No wonder why I was breaking. Not only did this help me to see how valuable my contribution to my family was, it also helped me to validate why I was sick and suffering. Because I realized that I was doing way too much work. And this was not my husband's fault. This was not my fault. This was because we lived in a system, we live in Portugal now, but we used to live in California, where cost of housing is impossible, cost of college is ridiculous, cost of healthcare was over a third of our paycheck. It's a system that's rigged for young families to fail, and we were failing. And that really helped me to start seeing myself as I deserve to be taken care of. I deserve the same love and care as everybody else. What I do as a stay-at-home mom is extraordinarily valuable. And even though society does not value me, I will value me. I will not give my power away anymore and decide that, oh, I will only feel valuable and worthy when society values me and deems me worthy. I changed that narrative and decided that no matter what anyone said or thought, that I would start valuing myself through my actions. Because even though I was so far gone mentally and emotionally at that point, I didn't believe I was worthy internally, I would at least act like it. I would remind myself of the facts that my therapist helped me come up with, of all the roles I fulfilled and how much money I was saving my family. And I would use those facts as motivation and as validation of how much I'm going through and how much I deserve to take care of myself, even when I didn't feel worthy of it. So those are the things that helped me to start to change the direction I was heading in. And I did start to kind of come up with a framework that helped me to take care of myself on a regular basis, but that's another podcast episode for another day. But that's really where it began. And I hope you can see that when it comes to self-care, people always ask me for tips and tricks and hacks. It's an inside-out job. It didn't matter how many YouTube videos or podcast episodes about self-care tips and time management I listened to or watched, because I didn't believe I was worthy and there was no time to take care of myself. And so it really needed to start as me figuring out why I didn't feel deserving, where did that come from, identifying that culprit in capitalism, and then going from there. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to share a final thought with you. I'll see you after the break. Have you ever gotten a little time to take care of yourself and then you're instantly overwhelmed with what the heck you should do first? Yeah, I used to feel that way too. I call that self-care overwhelm, which leads to decision fatigue and results in you not taking care of yourself in the way that you really need to feel nourished and filled up. This used to be a constant problem for me back when I had my second baby, and that's when I created the 4B self-care framework to help my exhausted mom brain figure out what I needed to do to take care of myself with the small pockets of time and energy that I had. In this framework, there are 4 types of self-care: basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. In my new mini course, I teach you about these 4 types of self-care. I show you how to prioritize, and I give you a printable to plan out your self-care over a 30-day period to help you go on your own journey of self-discovery to figure out what you really need to feel healthy, happy, and taken care of. You can get this mini course completely for free on my website at miahemstad.com/course. I'll have it linked in the show notes as well. Okay, so my final thought for you, thanks for making it to the end of this episode. I wanted to share this really important truth, and that is, if you're struggling with taking care of yourself, with burnout, with loving your kids well, maybe you're snapping at them a lot, maybe you're snapping at your partner a lot, maybe you just feel like you're failing at every area of your life. I want you to hear me when I say this. It is not your fault. You don't need to be better at time management. You're not struggling because you need to try harder. You don't need to wake up earlier because God knows you need more sleep. It's because society relies on the free labor of women, and especially the free labor of moms, to raise kids and run homes and do domestic labor for free in order for capitalism to thrive and continue to function. It's really hard for us to take care of ourselves without guilt, because this is the way it has been for centuries. This system that oppresses women and relies on us to just work ourselves to death while birthing and feeding kids from our bodies, it's been around for a really long time. It's been around for so long that it's so ingrained and conditioned into us that we don't even see it. So here's what I want you to do as you go out into your life. Give yourself some credit for every effort that you make. Tell yourself that you're trying. Tell yourself that your effort is enough. And hold yourself with so much compassion when you struggle, because it is not your fault that you're struggling to survive in a system that was designed to suppress you and oppress you. I want to thank you so much for listening to my very first podcast episode, and I'm so excited to be sharing more stories and life advice and inspiration with you every week here on the No Longer Last Journey podcast. I'll see you next time.